Hello, Santa Paula. Since announcing our new police chief, Travis Walker, we know there's been concerns and questions that have come up by the community, especially on social media. And so it's why we're here today and grateful to Peggy Kelly from the Santa Paula Times, editor and publisher, to come and join us and really, in the name of transparency, ask questions. We're public servants. We want to be accessible to the public. Mr. Walker and I are both committed to that. And Peggy, you've been so in tune with the community and the questions. You have such a finger on the pulse, as they would say, that we thought it'd be appropriate to give you a chance to ask both Travis and I questions about this selection. So take it away.
Okay, great. And good morning to you, Dan, and good morning, Chief. Nice meeting you also.
Good morning, Peggy. Thank you for having and facilitating this through the city.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Dan, of course, as you said, it's all about transparency. Now, what was the recruitment process? I know that it's gone on for a long time. It's very extensive. So could you let's talk about the recruitment process and hiring the new chief?
Sure. Like is often the case, we cast a wide net. We went and did a thorough recruiting for this very important position. We had 19 finalists that all qualified. We brought together. How many total
did you get? Excuse me. How many total did you get as far as applications?
19 that met the minimum qualifications. Okay. Yeah. And we narrowed that down to 8. We asked some outside agencies to help us with that process. It was not only an intensive search, but it included obviously a great deal of background and vetting. We brought in a panel of 3 professional chiefs of police to do initial interviews, and then ultimately they narrowed the field down to 3.
So these chiefs did actually one-on-one interviews with the candidates.
Yes, they did.
As far as Zoom interviews.
That's right. Okay. And there was then multiple rounds of interviews after that. And, we can get into that more as well.
Sure. Well, let's go ahead. Who was involved in the interviews?
Yeah, I thought it was so important to be very inclusive. Although this is a decision that the city manager makes, especially being fairly new to the city, I wanted to really get feedback from a number of people. So after we had the professional panel, some months later, I met and interviewed each of the 3 finalists. The city council members met with the 3 finalists. Our entire executive team met with them. We brought together 7 men and women from the police department because I felt it was important to have their input and insight and to get in a dialogue with these candidates. We even had a citizens panel that the city council selected. And so it was really pretty intense a couple of days. All 3 of our finalists were outstanding and well qualified. This was a very difficult decision in that respect.
Absolutely. Now, how did the media reports, as far as the accusations against Chief Walker, how I know you knew about those probably from the beginning, because it certainly is out there, as it were, on the internet and the news stories and things like that. So what did you do about that? I mean, what did you think about that, and what did you do about that? Because it's something, of course, that was never meant to be hidden, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I want to give a shout out to Chief Walker, because he was transparent in those interviews. And it was a sign of his integrity. And it was also a recognition that, he knew that we were going to fully vet that kind of thing, and that it was better to be upfront and not have anyone surprised. But of course, it raised cautions for us. The reason that we went through that process in the fall and it took till this long for us to make this announcement is simply because we had to do a very thorough background check. It's traditional under the California laws and the post standards to do a full investigation. That includes a psychological assessment, physical, credit, background, references. It doesn't just rely on the things that Mr. Walker wants us to know. It goes far deeper than that.
And of course, it's added more layers also, I imagine.
a lot of layers, and the
Mm-hmm.
investigator dives into things that normal background or job reference checks never would.
Mm-hmm.
Once he submitted his report to me, I still felt, given the sensitivity of this topic and this lawsuit, that I needed to be satisfied myself. And so I reached out to a number of people in Cathedral City, as well as others that know of Mr. Walker's character, and really made sure that I felt comfortable with the situation and dealing with it. So we really vetted the heck out of this. Chief Walker's background was not only fairly clean other than this situation, but most significantly, the level of input and references and comments that I heard were just outstanding. And they comported with what we saw in the interview process. And I should say that while this was my decision, Peggy, Mr. Walker at every stage of this process really came out kind of ahead, if you will. I didn't always ask each panel to rank the candidates, but it was clear that he was the leading candidate. And yet we had two very strong others. So
absolutely. And this was even with the knowledge of the accusations that he still ranked with these different levels of committees and different committees as a top choice.
Yeah, and I think weighing on my decision about what to do is the fact that we have heightened scrutiny of what police departments need to be, right? And for a community, a small department and community-based department like ours, I really felt, especially with the added resources we have with Measure T funding, that this is a time for Santa Paula to really start to invest in what it wants to be for the next 10 or 20 years. And Mr. Walker brings a huge number of ideas and experience levels. He's a fresh set of eyes, and that also gave that weighed on me and gave him an edge, because he has a lot of experience that you'll hear from in a minute, that I think is going to be very healthy for our department in terms of community engagement and community-based policing. And I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. And this has something, what would you say to those that were wondering why you would go outside versus an internal promotion, as it were? Just basically versus somebody who's much more, no offense to the chief there, but somebody who's much more familiar with Santa Paula, as it were.
Well, I think this is a chance to look at a bit of a new chapter. And so first of all, I do want to acknowledge Chief Cordero. He has not just my gratitude for coming out of retirement and leading our public safety department, but he did so at a really difficult time.
Yes.
And I really respect him and the work that he's done. This is a challenging time for public safety. And I think that we, as I just said, we have a chance at some fresh leadership that will come in with the level of experience that I'm not sure that we've always had before. And the community will get to judge that and see that over the next year as we give Mr. Walker a chance to be our chief and to really demonstrate what a police department can mean, not just in fighting crime, but in addressing so many of a community's issues.
Now, I have some questions for the new Chief Walker. Now, could you address the accusations that had, that have been being talked about and published and things like that on social media and things like that? I might add, we only went with the press release at that point in time. I was aware of this. Nobody, to my knowledge, had tried to hide any of this. And I am, this has been something that was not trying to be hidden or anything like that. And I do want to make that clear. So, But anyway, and we had a short deadline. I wanted to wait and talk to you in depth. So, but now, so tell the public, you and I have had a chance to talk. So now tell the public, can you address this as far as the media reports connected to your name that, you know, the negativity and things like that. I hate to use the word negative because it is negative in itself, but it's just that it certainly isn't. Just go ahead and address that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can tell it's a very uncomfortable topic to discuss or even ask about, and I think you hit the nail squarely on the head, Peggy, when you said they're accusations. An accusation can be made alleging anything, and I think what should be important is what was the outcome of those accusations. You know, I reference back to George Washington once said, you know, when one side of a story is heard and often repeated, the human mind becomes impressed with it insensibly. And it becomes a challenge when there's only one side. During that time, I was, for lack of a better term, I was legally muzzled and couldn't defend myself in the court of public opinion. But the statement I did make when the allegation was first released was I supported the city's decision that they had to make. I supported the investigation that they had to conduct, and I told them that at the conclusion of the investigation, I would be absolved of the accusations that were made. And fortunately, that's exactly what the investigation showed. I think, you know, as you look at social media, and I know a lot of this is being generated through social media posts, there's a lot of information that's being put out where you only have one side of the story and there's always two sides. If you read, as I looked at some of the media, if you read a lawsuit that had been published out of San Bernardino, it referenced me in form of a question rather than accusing me or naming me in this lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, the sensationalism of what the allegations were at the time really fed to a fire that we see in the world of social media. But what I was comforted by was the fact that this was thoroughly investigated by an independent agency. It was reviewed by an extremely professional legal team, and the determination was made that the acts didn't occur. Mm-hmm. So the root of this issue from Cathedral City, I think it's important to understand that the allegations were strategically launched 4 days before I was supposed to deal with a personnel matter involving that employee. The case against me was dismissed with prejudice, meaning that they can't file the case again. The case is done.
You were never charged with a crime either, and I would say that type of complaint would actually lead to criminal charges. So you were never charged with anything, and you had the sheriff's department investigated that also, or was there ever actually a complaint filed other than a personnel complaint?
Yes, and that's what I was getting to is, you know, I was absolved of the accuser's doubtful and disputed allegations, and you know, I want you to understand that I pushed to make sure that you could see the outcome of that case, so that you could see that if you read the settlement agreement, it clearly states that this was the settlement of doubtful and disputed allegations that the plaintiff had made. The lawsuit, the disposition of the lawsuit echoed similar findings made by the independent investigation by the local sheriff's department at the time, and it was determined by the district attorney that nothing contained in their investigation supported any charges being filed. So that answers the question that I think you were looking for, that no, there was nothing, there was no criminal case. There was, the civil case was resolved utilizing those words of this being a doubtful and disputed allegation. And again, we go back, this was an allegation, not a finding. There was no finding of guilt or liability. I was not found liable to have done anything that the accuser stated very openly in many publications that I think people have fed into on the internet.
Okay, I appreciate you addressing that. And now also, let's talk about your career. Let's talk about your career. How long have you been in law enforcement?
So I joined this noble profession in January of 1997 when I became a police officer for the city of San Bernardino. I worked a variety of assignments that gave me a breadth of experience in not only crime fighting, but community and problem-oriented policing. As you know, San Bernardino has challenges, and the community was an extremely diverse community. So we really had to work hard to build trust with the community to be able to have that partnership and that collaboration to effectively problem solve and create a safe environment to help improve the quality of life for those that live there. I worked a variety of assignments from patrol, community and problem-oriented policing, narcotics. I was a canine handler. I spent time working a variety of different task forces, multi-agency task forces to fight crime within the city and the region. As a detective, I investigated everything from property-based crimes of burglary to complex homicide investigations involving gangs and other organized crime.
Now, weren't you also the leader, not to interrupt, but weren't you also the headed up the SWAT team that went into that awful incident in San Bernardino, that mass shooting?
I did, and that came as I was ultimately promoted into a command level. One of my duties was I was the SWAT commander. Yes, we did respond on December 2nd, 2015 to that tragic incident, and it's something we never hope anybody has to deal with, but I was very grateful for the work that the men and women from multiple agencies that came from all around the region to help resolve that tragic incident. I'm very, very grateful and thankful for their work that day, and it definitely helped make my job as a leader that much easier. When you surround yourself with good people, your job as a leader is made that much more easier. So I really value that in our profession, that we have professional officers that are willing to run into harm's way when others are running out of harm's way.
Now, that was just to update the audience just a little bit. That was City of San Bernardino employees. Could you remind me the circumstances of that shooting?
Yes.
Christmas party.
It was a holiday party for county employees. They were county health employees that took place within our jurisdiction. And one of the employees who had been radicalized as a terrorist, he and his wife entered the facility and shot multiple people, tragically killing 14. And they were later killed in a shootout with officers about 1.5 miles away from the scene.
Yes. That must have been a very painful experience for you and all your crew and everybody involved.
I think it was painful for not just the law enforcement. It was painful for our entire community. It was extremely painful for our nation with everything that was going on at the time. It was just an utter tragedy that I wish we never had to respond to, but I'm thankful that I had the team that I did with me that day and the other agencies that responded to be able to successfully resolve that threat.
And can I just jump in? Unfortunately, that kind of violence has just become all too prevalent. And when I was city manager up in Goleta, we had a mass shooting. It was just horrible. It's a painful time for not just a community, but for humanity.
Absolutely.
And And I just hope and pray that's not something that Chief Walker is going to ever have to deal with here.
Absolutely not.
But we know just from this last year that we've had a few homicides, and there is violence in communities, and it's so important to have somebody with his experience and professionalism to come and support the good work that our department does. But to be able to come with that level of experience, I appreciate. It's not something you wish on someone.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So, you know, I didn't mean to digress, but now what's your vision for serving the Santa Paula community?
Well, I think one of the benefits I had was when this process began, it was back in July, and I felt it was important to really understand what the community felt was the concerns with crime and other issues in Santa Paula. My wife and I made several trips up and enjoyed the hospitality of outdoor dining, which was kind of new based on the COVID restrictions. But, you know, as we walked down Main Street, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in the city of Barstow, and Barstow had a main street. And so a lot of my childhood memories and memories growing up were kind of rekindled as I walked down Main Street in Santa Paula. The tie to the railroad, you know, Barstow had a tie to the railroad. Main Street, the small businesses, you know, my wife and I walked into the antique shops and had a chance to talk to some of the not only patrons that were inside, but, you know, the owners.
And Santa Paula, yes.
Yes, and it was something that really it showed kind of what direction the community was going. It was a very resilient downtown that I was seeing, and as I started doing more research and seeing the revitalization goals that the council has for downtown and things that they wanted to bring to the community, I really said, this is right in my wheelhouse because it's what I grew up with. The community was comprised of similar demographics that I have been accustomed to building partnerships and developing programs and plans to make the community safer and improve the quality of life for the residents. Mm-hmm. And so as I started looking at what my vision was going to be for the department, it was truly to build trust with the community. And it's not that there's no trust now with Santa Paula. It's our profession as a whole nationally has been viewed to be able, it's viewed that we need to do a better job in our relationship building. And it's something that I have specialized in my two previous agencies of building that relationship with the community through meeting with them in the community settings, you know, coffee with the cop or coffee with the chief, creating a community advisory, or I'm sorry, a chief's advisory committee, where I can select stakeholders from the community that represent different segments of the community so that they can help advise me and be educated on what the organization is doing and where we are going as a department. It's also helpful when I brief Mr. Singer or the council that, you know, I had the opportunity to seek counsel from my advisory committee, and this was their feeling. So now the council and Mr. Singer have been educated that, hey, there is some community feedback that I've already received on this. And it's either, hey, we need to do a little more community engagement and revisit this in 6 months, or they feel that this is a great idea and they're willing to support us and get out to their constituents that this is a good program for the city.
Now with this advisory committee, you would draw from different segments of the community for this?
Yes, I want to get settled into the community and start identifying who the stakeholders are in the community. There are different segments that need to be represented, whether it's from, you know, certain ethnic makeups to the faith-based group to the business leaders. I want to have a diverse group that truly represents the community. because the problems that the business owners have may be different than the problems that somebody who lives up on Monte Vista might have, or somebody who lives up off Santa Paula might have. So those are all of the challenges that I want to be able to have at that table with me, so that I can hear, I can get feedback, I can provide them with feedback, and then I can use them as ambassadors for the police department to be able to convey our message back out to the segment of the community that they represent. Because I can tell you, I'm not going to be able to reach every member of that community, and nor would any of the staff of the police department be able to reach every single segment of the community. So when you have these advisory committee members, they're able to take that message back to those segments and truly help spread it to those that may not get the information through social media or through the local newspaper. So it's just an effort to it's just an effort for us to be able to engage with the community in a more intimate fashion. And when I can have those people as an executive advisory committee to the chief, it just helps strengthen that relationship in our community.
Yes, especially since I would think that people are more prone to tell a civilian, as it were, if they're unhappy about something. I would assume they would feel more comfortable telling a civilian, who could pass that on to you if there's concerns.
And that's really what I found to be beneficial. Was there were people that just didn't feel comfortable talking to the police, whether it's based on where they lived or cultural background. There's just a fear of communicating with law enforcement. But they could tell the person that they knew representing their area, who brings that to the attention of myself or a designee, that we're able to effectively address it. And I think that's important, in where we can meet monthly and be able to provide updates on the organization and where we're going and what we're doing, policy changes or initiatives that we're looking to roll out. It's invaluable for me to have that feedback, so I'm not just making the decision in a vacuum without understanding really what the community needs, wants, or what they feel is a priority for us.
Now, can you elaborate? I know you've been thinking about, or you're planning on starting a community policing academy, and I know it's a little different take than what they've had a long time ago in Santa Paula. So could you explain that?
Well, I think the community academy it's a valuable tool, and it's something that I've used in the past that has allowed us to effectively connect with our community and truly change mindsets of people who have a preconceived idea of what law enforcement is, or what police officers do day in and day out. And what it does is allows us to kind of peel the layer of the onion back on the police department, so that people can come in. And my vision for this is probably going to be a 6-week program. We meet once a week, usually in the evening, and we provide instruction on what the police department services are, what we provide for the community, and how they can engage and interact with the organization. We'll talk about dispatch. We have dispatchers that would come in and explain what their duties are within the police department. What their expectations are when a caller calls to report a crime or to report an abandoned vehicle. And so it helps educate the community on how to effectively communicate with the police department, so we can prioritize their call properly, because some people will say, why did it take an hour for the officers to get to my house when I called them? Well, your call may have been a lower priority. We had traffic accident, we had burglary in progress, we had another traffic accident, and your priority of call wasn't such that we could get somebody out there immediately. So it helps educate them there. Professional Standards Bureau or Internal Affairs, how do we investigate the officers? How do you file a complaint against an officer? What the law states as far as our duty to investigate. Senate Bill 1421 that was passed a few years ago that now mandates certain misconduct to be made public within 180 days of the occurrence, not of the disposition, but of the occurrence of the incident. So those are things that we get to educate the public on, and they get to see, wow, they really do look at this. They really do thoroughly investigate it. We'll also bring in our SWAT team and have the SWAT team do a demonstration so that people can see that we have armored vehicles, but they're not tanks. They're not offensive weapons. I think it's important that people understand that especially coming from the incident we had in San Bernardino that played out very publicly over international news, you saw the benefit that the armored vehicles and that how I could use them as tools for safety of not only getting our officers in and out of an extremely hazardous zone, but we could use it to evacuate members of the community to ensure their safety or their family's safety getting out of what we would call a hot zone. So it allows them to see what the equipment is. We show them our less lethal options of force. We show them what our use of force policy is. We show them how we train officers in use of force. We talk about the state mandates for training and how we account for that. So it really opens the department up to the community to see exactly what it is they do. Another value for me as a chief in being able to get those great citizens in that environment for 6 weeks is it helps us also market our volunteer programs. I'm a true believer in citizens on patrol, having seniors. You know, the community has a great deal of retirees that live there. And if they have certain skill sets in the public sector that might be able to help us internally, it does help with the fact that we don't have a staff of a larger department, but we still have a heavy workload that we're always looking for some sort of help. And we can vet these people. We put them through a background check. It's not as extensive as law enforcement, but we do make sure that they have the ability to be around sensitive material, and we do vet them. And we allow them to be part of the community to help us in the policing efforts. Because like Sir Robert Peel said in 1829, kind of the founder of community policing, the community are the police and the police are the community. And we have to have that relationship if we're going to have a successful reduction in crime and be able to improve the quality of life. And my job as chief is not to come in and change the organization or come in and change the city. My job is to enhance the law enforcement services that the community expects, that the community desires, and that falls within the industry standards within the 21st century of policing.
Is that your goal? Is that your goal, would you say?
I wouldn't say it's a goal. That's every day we're going to be moving that ball forward. Okay. So it's something that I think a goal is a lofty idea that you hope to get to someday, but we're going to develop a strategic plan with a shared vision between members of the police department, members of the community. And I'm telling you, it's all aspects, not only from the organization, but all aspects of the community to be able to identify what the priorities are of the community, what the priorities are of the organization, and be able to meld those priorities together in a comprehensive document that we can use as a roadmap for the future. I don't believe in a 5-year strategic plan. I think what we need in Santa Paula right now is maybe a 1-year strategic plan where we can have some successes and report successes back to the community. And then we redefine what our goals are going to be after that. But then we also look at a multi-year capital replacement plan for some of the things that we need in the organization or technology that can help us better secure the community. And we start laying that out for Mr. Singer and the council to be aware of. And we start looking for funding sources, whether it's through leveraging law enforcement specific grant programs or lobbying some of our local leaders at the state level or the national level. There are many ways that we can look at leveraging grants right now to help improve the safety of the community.
And, you know, you've got a very strong Santa Paula Police and Canine Foundation.
Yes, I do.
plan on meeting with. I know you're smiling, so I know you've heard good things about them, and they're a great group, and they've made a big difference for the police department. Now, let me ask you both. Of course, with COVID, you know, we're all hemmed in somewhat or a lot. So how is the Santa Paula community, Dan and Chief Walker, both of you, please, how are you going to engage the community, or at least start by meeting the community?
I'm glad you asked that, because you know, it would be the case in any event with a significant leadership person like the chief of police, that we would want to invite the community to get to know that person. And normally, and Travis and I had kind of talked about this, normally I would offer to do a coffee event, open house. Travis would pay for the donuts, I'd pay for the coffee.
Wow.
And we would invite the community to come in. And of course, COVID makes that really impossible at this time, but I don't want to prevent the interaction to occur. That's why we've also asked to even do this segment. So Mr. Walker will start February 1st. He'll spend a good bit of time with the department and getting to know the ins and outs of the department. He'll be sworn in front of the city council Wednesday night at their council meeting, February 3rd. Sometime by the middle of February, we would really like to do a community forum, and we'll have to do it virtually, but it'll be an opportunity to truly meet Mr. Walker, ask questions. We're also planning a number of more select engagements, and some of those are actually going to start next week. Mr. Walker's agreed to take some of his time next week, even before he starts the job, to meet with groups like our Police Foundation, our Chamber of Commerce, the Citizens Panel that interviewed him. I've reached out to Latino Town Hall, really, and I will with the school district, really wanting to be available to any groups that would like to get to know him, Spirit of Santa Paula, the faith-based community, etc. So, yeah, so over the next month or two, we'll also be doing some of that. And Travis, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I look forward to meeting with the various community groups to gain a better understanding about the needs and priorities, as well as to answer any questions they might have. Building those partnerships is the key to success, and oftentimes we've seen if we can't wait for a critical incident to occur in the community before we start having these conversations. So I want to be able to meet and have open dialogue and make sure we're building strong partnerships with these various groups as we move the organization forward.
Now, what would you like to say about this new chapter in Santa Paula, Dan? I mean, it basically is, I guess, a new chapter.
It really is. And I think, as Mr. Walker said, we're building on the strength of our department, but also looking at new opportunities. I would just ask two things. I would ask our residents, first of all, to join me in welcoming a new chief. I think we have a great opportunity. And the second thing I would say is, Chief Walker and I are public servants. As I said at the beginning, we're here to serve the public. And as such, you have rights to judge us by our actions, judge us by our inactions. And so I would just really ask our residents to be patient, give Chief Walker a chance to demonstrate his leadership, and then judge us. So let's take a step back and allow for him to get here and see where we can go as a community. And Travis, you want to close with a couple of words?
I do, and I want to thank not only you, Mr. Singer, but the council, the community. This wasn't an easy process. It was an extremely long process that sought several answers from the candidates, and I want to congratulate Chief Cordero on his successful retirement and his service to the community. I think he's going to be an invaluable resource for me in understanding the historical aspect and the future of the community. And I hope that we can have an extremely close relationship as we move the organization forward. I think at the end of the day, I'm truly humbled to be given this opportunity, and I'm eager to begin working alongside the Santa Paula community and the officers in the organization, along with the professional staff, which is often forgotten. The records clerks, the evidence technicians, the dispatchers, those are the people behind the scene that help keep the department running. And then as well as the employees from the city hall side that help support the efforts that go into successfully running a police department. So I'm eager to really hit the ground running, be integrated into the community. I'm going to tell you, I love the restaurants down there. Dan introduced me to a great barbecue place not too far, so I think I'll be walking from the station to the barbecue and to the places along Main Street to have lunch and be able to interact with residents. I'm a person that's always going to be in uniform. You'll see me, you'll be able to recognize me. I'm usually the tallest one walking down the street, so please feel free if you see me. Let's have a conversation. My doors are open to you. My wife and I are looking forward to calling Santa Paula our future home, as we're already in the process of looking for new residences within the community to make sure that we're integrated as a family within the community, because I think that adds value to the level of service that your police department provides when your chief is also in the community as well. So with that, thank you. I look forward to the opportunity. I look forward to February 1st coming, and I'm looking forward to the great things that Santa Paula is going to see from its police department and city government.
That's wonderful. And by the way, I just wanted to point out that's your family behind you there, isn't it, in that lovely frame?
Oh, it is, yes.
Very nice. Okay.
We'll look forward to them in person. And thank you, Peggy, for taking the time. You're not getting compensated to be here and be part of this dialogue, but truly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad, and thank you for inviting me. I'm glad you did.